Welcome to part 25 of the Basic Training Booster Pass Edition. Today we're going to cover everything you need to know to play Amsterdam Drift on 150cc. Being the first video since the balance patch, the recommended build for this course is going to be Daisy, Teddy Buggy, Rollers, and Paper Glider. Yep, I know you're all beside yourselves with grief, but no more Waluigi. Before the run begins, hold down the item button so that you can use a mushroom as early as possible. Then, we're going to immediately start a right drift to build up a mini turbo before doing a little cut over the grass here. It's not really that hard to learn. The main thing is to be as close to the pole as you can get without hitting it, and then just do a left hop over the grass and then land in a drift. You're going to hold that drift for an uncomfortably long amount of time while tightening up just a little bit to build up a super mini turbo. Do a right hop to release followed by one more right hop into a wide left drift so that you can build up a mini turbo and do some glider vectoring to grab one of the coins here. The world record is a fairly different setup where they trick off the ramp and then grab 2 coins, but I had a hard time kind of making this work for myself, so that's why I just do the vectoring instead. You'll notice they're using Yoshi Bitty Buggy. I'll get into this a bit later, but this is basically a replacement for the old baby builds, whereas Daisy Teddy Buggy is a replacement for the old Waluigi build. Anyways, after making our way back down the track, we're going to land in a left drift and build up a super mini turbo before the first molehill here. Release your super mini turbo at the same time as the trick, and then land in another left drift to do a mini turbo trick off the second molehill. After tricking off the third molehill, land in a left drift and grab the coins, and then we're going to do a fairly annoying strategy here. Once we build up a super mini turbo, we're going to immediately start a wide right drift, and then we want to try and time this out so that when we get our mini turbo, 2 left hops will set us up to grab the coin and trick off the ramp. We want to do these 2 hops so that when we land from the trick, we can land in a right drift and mini turbo trick off the next ramp while grabbing the coin. What sucks about this strategy is that you really need to make sure to time it out properly. If you do your second hop too early, then one of 2 things is going to happen. Either you'll hit the yellow pillar on the right, or if you manage to get the mini turbo trick successfully, you'll hit the wall on the right after coming out of the tunnel. The way to avoid this is to just do a left hop into a right drift to build up a mini turbo, but again, if your timing on the hops before going into the tunnel is messed up, then that wall is going to be totally unavoidable. The next bit of the run is fairly straightforward. You can soft drift around this next turn to build up an ultra mini turbo and then build up one more mini turbo around the final turn before moving on to section 2. The entire water section coming up is pretty tricky to learn properly. If you do what I do and just trick off the ramp here, then just let your cart float down slowly and try and trick as late as possible off the first set of water jets so that you minimize the amount of time you spend off the ground. This is important because you want to immediately land in a hard right drift to not get flung completely into the wall on the outside. So what I do is kind of hold a 1 o'clock/2 o'clock position on the joystick to get that drift started as early as possible. The world record does something a little bit different in that they mini turbo trick off the ramp, which gives them a bit more airtime and lets them get back to the ground more or less immediately. But it's pretty hard to time this out properly, which is why I didn't really bother going for it in my own run. Now, after building up the super mini turbo, we're again going to want to trick off the back half of the second water jet by driving around the front half. Again, positioning this can be fairly precise, but it's very important to maximize your time spent on the ground because the next set of water jets need to be taken in a very specific way to avoid getting shot up into the air. Basically, if you look at how these jets are set up, there's only 2 of them, one on the left and one on the right. And tricking off the part of the ramp directly between the second and third coins will allow you to not get any extra airtime. Like I said, it's fairly precise, but it saves at least half a second over tricking off the jets themselves, so it's definitely worth it to learn. After that, it's just landing in a wide right drift to build a super mini turbo followed by a couple more mini turbos before moving on to section 3. If you made it this far, section 3 is really not that bad. The worst part is the totally inconspicuous mushroom shortcut at the start of the section. I don't have a ton of advice for you all on this other than just start the turn kinda wide so that you have enough of a buffer to course correct as need be. After that, really the next major thing to talk about is the second underwater bit. After tricking, land in a left drift and build up a super mini turbo, and then widen up a bit when coming around the turn so that you can buy yourself enough time to start another right drift and do a mini turbo trick off the ramp. Your brain is going to be telling you to land in a right drift, but don't do that. Instead, just wait for a bit and then do a left drift so that you can take the first mushroom cut here. You should have enough time to build up an ultra mini turbo, so you can use that to cut off some of the second bit of off-road. The end of this section is kinda confusing to learn, but honestly pretty straightforward once you've played through it a couple of times. Around this left turn, you want to make sure to build up a super mini turbo and then do 2 right hops to avoid the wall, but otherwise, nothing super weird about the end of the run. Now that's it for my strats. Let's talk about the current world record a bit. I already pointed out that they use Yoshi for the increased mini turbo, and I think this would be a good time to talk a little bit about the time trial meta and how it's changed in Wave 4. The vast majority of world records, both on the new tracks and the old tracks, seem to be using one of the Yoshi equivalents, which are Yoshi, Daisy, Birdo, and Peach. And the basic story is that if the track is really twisty-turny, then use Bitty Buggy, otherwise use Teddy Buggy. There are some exceptions to this rule, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. As you're seeing on screen, the Yoshi Bitty Buggy build is really good on this track because it allows them to do a ton of extra mini turbo strats. But as you've no doubt heard me complain about with the baby tracks, this stuff hurts my hands just a bit too much and also really isn't viable online, which is why I'm not really going over it in too much detail, but I did want to give you a chance to see what those strats looked like. Anyways, that's it for the strats. Let's talk about the track a bit more while checking out my current personal best. And by the way, I know I say this in all my videos, but if you found this tutorial helpful, please don't forget to drop a like and a comment before you leave, since engaging with the video helps it get spread to more people, which is by far the best way to help out the channel. Thank you very much for that, I really do appreciate it. Now, Amsterdam Drift. Honestly, I really like this course a lot more than I thought I would. You know what? Screw it. I just like this course in general, and to me, it's definitely one of the most underrated tracks in Wave 4. There's really only two negative things I have to say about it. One is that the ending bit is really confusing to learn, and kind of smacks of, why can't they find ways to make the city tracks more manageable on a first playthrough kind of vibes. It's kind of funny because I played through these tracks with my daughter when they first released, and she got so pissed, like, I can't figure out where I'm going! And I'm over here like, hey man, don't look at me, I'm just as lost as you are. But like I said before, once you learn the track, it's really not that bad. The only other thing I have to complain about is the music. This might be one of the only courses in the game with music that I actually find unpleasant to listen to. I don't really know what it is specifically about this song that turns me off so much, and maybe if I was a music theory guy, I could say something smart about it, but suffice it to say, it just kinda sucks. But that's, again, all I really have to complain about. I really love everything else about the track. It's got a ton of interesting tech to learn, such as the mini turbo tricks off the molehills and ramps, and the precise way that you need to navigate the underwater section. I've actually heard a lot of people complain about the underwater bit, but frankly to me it's kind of a get good situation in that, like everything else on the track, once you've learned how to navigate it properly, it's really pretty fun to try and optimize. All in all, as far as I'm concerned, this is definitely one of the more solid city tracks we've gotten so far. And that's everything you need to know to play Amsterdam Drift on 150cc. We're finally approaching the back half of the DLC, so I definitely appreciate you all hanging out and watching all these videos. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to do some basic training, and as always, I will see you in the next video.